Here we're going to see how to explore human cognitive in an evolutionary perspective. How babies learn about the world. A significant amount of brain growth occurs after birth, and the reason is that ancestors found a difficulty in having to squeeze a baby with a large head and sizable body through a passage that was too small. The solution was having birth early. So, if babies knew nothing, how could they learn anything? In 1930, Jean Piaget said that babies knew quite a bit about the world as soon as they arrived in it. So, the brains and minds were destined to perceive some things but not others. They use these abilities to build up their knowledge and culminate in a rational understanding of the world. Researchers designed the experiment of habituation-dishabituation, and infants were repeatedly presented with a first stimulus until it failed to produce an increase in sucking intensity. Then they were presented with a second stimulus, and there were two options. If the baby perceives this stimulus different from the previous one, it will dishabituate and show an increase in sucking intensity. But if the baby doesn't perceive any difference in the stimulus, there will be no dishabituation and no increase in sucking. Some developmental psychologists, such as Elizabeth Spelk and Karen Wynne, have shown that very young babies understand physical concepts such as gravity. So these make us think that babies enter the world with a basic knowledge and they respond to different certain stimuli. Some tests performed that 2-month-old babies focus their attention for longer on face-like stimuli, but other studies have shown that babies prefer to look at any visual stimulus that has up-down asymmetry. Studies of the macaque monkeys have revealed that the superior temporal sulcus contains neurons that show highly specific responses to a particular kind of social stimuli. The other important feature is that the primate visual system has two distinct pathways. The magnocellular system, that is the dorsal area, concerned with moving detection, and it's common to all mammals. And then the parvocellular system, that is the ventral root linked to the amygdala, is unique to primates and analyzes fine detail and color. Robert Barton has shown that in species that are active during daylight, the number of cells in the parvocellular layer is positively related to social group size, but the number in the magnocellular is not. Between 9 and 14 months of age, the tendency for a young human to focus attention on the face-like stimuli develops into the ability to follow what the adults are looking at. And this phenomenon is called joint attention, and also it is usual the shared joint attention, where they look from the object to the other individual and back again. By 14 months of age, children are capable of directing an adult's attention to the object they are looking at, and like this, the adult's attention is coordinated with theirs. Now we are going to talk about the cultural ratchet, and Michael Tomasello says that shared attention is what distinguishes humans from the rest of the animal kingdom. From 9 months of age, human babies are able to recognize and respond to the physiological state of the others, and this is called 9-month revolution. The interaction between the child and its cultural environment leads to the flowering of the cognitive skills that make a fully fledged human. He also talks about the ratchet effect that says that the children acquire one set of skills, this changes the way in which adults interact with them. And he builds on the work of Vygotsky that says that adult humans have really good mind-reading skills, and we really infer and attribute mental states to other individuals to explain their behavior. And this leads to what Mameli terms mind shaping, where the beliefs you hold about another person lead that person to act in a way that fits your beliefs about them. And Mameli's argument is that only a very basic ability to read minds is needed. Once children are capable of joint attention, they begin to use social referencing and imitative learning. Social referencing is to guide their behavior, and imitative learning, at 18 months of age, the children imitates what the adult is trying to do and not what they are actually doing. Children know that a change in their perspective can modify the function of an object. And then 2-year-old children are beginning to appreciate that others can have a different perspective on something to the one they themselves have. They can correct themselves and use a more appropriate word for an object when they realize that the other individual won't necessarily know what they are referring to. Intentional stance refers to hierarchical series of mind states. The first order intentionally organisms know their own minds. Second order intentionally is having a belief about someone else's minds. And then third order intentionally having a belief on someone else's belief about one's own mind. 2-year-old children don't understand that representation is also the process by which these mental entities are formed in a person's mind. Then 4 to 5-year-old, on the other hand, have no trouble with these kind of problems. But Tomasello disagrees because he suggests that all the really hard work has been done during the first 2 years of life.
Now, in Chapter 5, we are going to talk about choosing mates for reproduction. First, we have to take into account that mate choice is not a random occurrence. It is one of the most important choices we make in our lives, and there are different criterions that we use for choosing a mate. First, we have to take into account the constraints of ancient biology. We are mammals, so that means that there are differences in the cost of reproduction depending on the sex of the individual. For example, males contribute less to reproduction because the only thing they do is contribute some sperm. However, females have to gestate the fetus, provide nutrients, give birth, and later on provide nutrients through milk. So, biologically speaking, what should we look for in a mate? Women, according to biology, tend to look for men who with high-quality genes that will lead to more successful offspring, and also men's ability to contribute in childcare, for example, wealth or the willingness to be a good father. As seen before, real investment can be indirect or direct. Indirect means wealth or high status that will provide the family with resources. Direct investment is teaching the children how to be a functional member of society. So, biologically speaking, what should men look for in a woman? Men tend to be more sensitive to indicators of female fertility, which means age and beauty. So, how do we go for finding the ideal partner? First, we have to consider that mate choice preference is not the same as mate choice decisions. Liking someone doesn't mean that they will like you back. So, in order to successfully reproduce, we have to make compromises, and in the end, the person we will settle for will be the compromise we made between preference and opportunity. All these examples have been proven in real life. Evolutionary psychologists have proven these claims by looking at dating sites and how men and women present themselves for looking for an ideal partner and what they look for. In these dating apps, females tend to prefer males who have wealth or status or those that want to invest in the relationship. On the other hand, males look for female physical attractiveness. All these examples have been proven in real life. Evolutionary psychologists have proven these claims by looking at dating sites and how men and women present themselves for looking for an ideal partner and what they look for. What we want is not always what we get. So people who have the qualities people look for in their possible mates will have a greater chance to be more picky when choosing a partner. That means they will have a greater range of options for them to choose of their future partner. In dating apps, there is a belief that people tend to lie about what they are. But that's not entirely true, because people tend to suppress some information like age in older women, but not because they want to lie about that, because when you meet them, you will instantly realize if they are saying something truthful or not. But they believe that with their other good qualities, they will compensate for that bad quality they have, for example, old age. As there is natural selection, there is also sexual selection. This defines the traits that will be useful for the reproduction of the individual. However, not always this goes in hand with natural selection. Sometimes the sexual selected traits that appear in a species do not help their survival, but they help their reproductive ability. One of these traits that sexual selection has selected for humans is height. which is an attractive factor to females. Tall men self-reportedly date more than smaller men. They are usually more healthy and less likely to suffer from heart diseases. So this also correlates with natural selection. This is also an example of mating choice based on gene quality. Another part that conveys information of attractiveness is the face. A symmetrical face is more attractive than a symmetrical one, because it also is an indicator of health. As shown before, symmetry is an obvious characteristic used in the animal kingdom to determine the quality of the genes of an individual. Symmetric males have been found to be more attractive to females, and there are studies that suggest that females can smell male symmetry. They prefer the smell of symmetrical males than asymmetrical males. This is believed it happens because through the smell they can identify the gene quality of the male.
Well, I'm going to talk about Chapter 6, the dilemmas of parenthood. And first, we're going to talk about the cost of reproduction. Parental investment decisions are based on their distribution of resources, determined by the characteristics of both the parent and the child. Between mammals, the most obvious form of parental investment is lactation. As long as a female is suckling her offspring, she experiences lactational amenorrhea. Her menstrual hormone system is shut down and she cannot conceive. And the duration of this is one indicator of the amount of investment, and studies have demonstrated considerable variation in both the timing and duration of the offspring dependence. They continue to help beyond maturity, often providing material and non-material resources to help their offspring get ahead in the world. For example, parents might pay for further education, they might help finance a home or a business, and they might help with childcare, or most obviously, they might leave bequests on their death. In modern Western welfare states, these kinds of investments might not be as obvious as they are in more traditional societies. Not only do families have to pay for school fees and other associated costs, but any child who is in school is not available for household labor. In some cases, investing in daughters' education might not be in your own best interests, for example, in patriarchal societies. A Darwinian paradox. Lack of parental solicitude raises Darwinian eyebrows. Why should parents limit the amount of care they are prepared to offer their offspring? The natural temptation is to see such behavior as a reflecting of some kind of pathology or disease. The solution to the dilemma of infanticide lies that by killing the offspring, parents might in fact be optimizing the way they distribute their available reproductive investment. Daly and Margot Wilson from McMaster University in Canada have argued that killing offspring can be viewed as the desperate decision of rational strategists allocating scarce resource. From a cross-cultural review of infanticide, they conclude three main reasons: paternity certainty, offspring quality, and insufficient resource of investment. Trevor's Willard effect was the theory based on the assumption that maternal condition influences the offspring's ability to reproduce as an adult. If the variance in the reproductive output differs, then it follows that a parent's preference for one sex of offspring over other will depend on the parent's own condition and its impact on the reproductive capabilities of the offspring. Parents in poor conditions who can afford a limited amount in each offspring should opt for the less risky sex. In mammals which mate polygamously, males have a higher variance in the total number of offsprings in a lifetime. This is due to the mammalian pattern of reproductive biology, which is in Chapter 4. Females are limited in the number of babies, which is due to the long periods of gestation and lactation, while males in contrast are only limited by the actual number of babies they can sire, and hence by the number of females with whom they mate. Attempts to identify Trevor's Willard effect in human behavior have focused on the socially stratified societies, where social status or wealth substitutes for parental condition. As we've read in the previous chapter, wealth has a greater impact on male than on female. This is because of the reproductive success. They use wealth to enter in polygynous unions to reproduce. Nonetheless, opportunities for hypergeny offer daughters of low status families an opportunity to exploit wealth and higher status. Wealthy higher status families should bias their investment towards sons rather than daughters, while poor low status families should prefer daughters. Doing so enables the appropriate sex to reproduce more successfully. One of the earliest studies looked at female infanticides in the Indian caste system. Female infanticides was particularly common in the castes, the nobility, and has been related to the much reduced marriage prospects for high status daughters. As a result, women have very limited appropriate husbands, whereas high caste sons had an entire social system below them in which to find a bride. Many of the studies that have tried to test for a transversal effect should be interpreted with caution. Two of the key assumptions of the theory are that one sex of offspring has a greater variance in their reproductive success than the other, and parents differ in their ability to invest. That is in their condition. If these conditions are not met, there is no reason why a transversal effect should be expected. In monopolized societies, families prefer to concentrate their wealth on just one of their offsprings and leave the rest to fend themselves as best they can. In this way, they guarantee the survival of the genetic lineage, since the lucky offspring has the best possibility of reproducing. Parents may be expected to opt for the primogeniture inheritance of the entire parental estate by the oldest offspring. During the early medieval period, partible inheritance was widespread across Europe. However, in the late medieval period, as land became more and more limited in its availability, families began to switch from partible inheritance to primogeniture, and by the year 1400, primogeniture had become the universal norm. Different societies have solved this problem in different ways, but always to maintain the economic integrity of the lineage principle reproductive base. However, the solution, which was to reduce the number of reproductive units within the family to one in each generation, had the consequences of recreating a group of disenfranchised young men. In late feudal Portugal, the inheritance crisis, which was produced by the shift to primogeniture among the landed ducal families, was solved by the encouraging later-born sons to carve out a new empire, instigating the great era of European exploration. In traditional Tibetan societies, the solution of choice was to marry all of the sons to a single woman. This had the merit of reducing economic rivalry between the sons. They all inherited the farm, while at the same time providing a guaranteed workforce, which with the family they made. In the pre-modern 19th century Germany, a different strategy was adopted. They developed a system of ultimogeniture, which was the inheritance by the youngest son, which helped to reduce the number of generational transitions each century. This helped because the inheriting had to provide partial compensation to his non-inheriting brothers. Human family unit can be viewed as a system in which parents encourage children to occupy different niches. Soloway argues that these differences emerge as a solution to the problem of scarce parental resources, including parental attention. In resume, parental investment decisions are based on an allocation of scarce resource. If parents have a finite amount of time, energy, or resource, then any that are invested in a particular offspring are necessarily not available to invest in other offspring, either current or future. The decision to invest in a particular offspring will be determined by a number of factors, one of which will be the child's prospect for the future reproduction.